Well, thank you all for being here for my debut of public speaking. You know, I feel like I'm kind of popping my public speaking cherry here, so I appreciate it. I'm going to take the old advice of picturing all of you naked. Oh my gosh, it brought on my anxiety. Never mind. Anyway, I'm kind of wanted to talk about the mental health pandemic. Sorry, attacking the mic. Yeah, this is something that's kind of been prevalent in my life through family, friends, and just kind of witnessing the world today as it's transitioning and everything that's going on. So it's something that's really kind of struck my interest, and I really did some deep studying into this affliction, I guess, of mental health. So this is really inspired by some friends of mine and my family, my brother Anthony, my friends that have recently died through various things have really kind of inspired this presentation today. So wanted to kind of shout out to them. Thank you for being there. Thank you for living. So here's the agenda that I wanted to go through. What is mental illness? And then we're going to kind of do a deep dive, maybe deep dive into the perspective, my perspective of the psyche, what causes some mental illness, and then what is our community responsibility and ways to help. So what is mental illness? Anything that affects mood, emotions, behavior, cognition, causing negative and ongoing problems in daily life. So when I think about this, oh boy, we're kind of in trouble, because looking around at people, it's pretty prevalent that we're having a mental health crisis right now. I don't know if you're aware, but it's like all over the place. So, here's the brief perspective into the psyche. So when I started this, I really, I love this idea of the subconscious brain, or of the going through consciousness into subconscious. So, thank you for working with me. I've really never done public speaking before, so this is fun. So the subconscious is a part of our minds that makes decisions without needing to actively think about them. So this is where 90 to 95% of our entire brain cognition and thoughts are coming from, is our subconscious brain. It's different from the conscious mind, which encompasses all the thoughts that we have at any given moment. So that's really what's separating our consciousness from our subconscious. Our unconscious also holds a lot of the past events and experiences that we really want to repress and don't want to be thinking about. So this is where a lot of our trauma, shame, guilt, blame, and humiliation really kind of fits in the subconscious mind. But our subconscious is really everything. It's our memory, it's our past experiences, it's our conditioning from childhood, it has all of our fears and projections, but this is also where we're generating all of our thoughts and all of our emotions, and it's also interpreting all of our sensory inputs. So with 80 to 95% of our thoughts being derived from the subconscious mind, on average we're having about 100,000 thoughts a day. 60 to 70% of those are thoughts that we've had previously in the previous day or throughout our lifetime. So if we're not aware of this, we're literally living a Groundhog Day of every day that we've ever experienced, just over and over again, relapsing. So it's also strengthening those neural pathways in the brain. So that's when we tend to focus on these thoughts a little bit more, is because we're constantly thinking about them and they grow stronger within the brain. Man, I'm sorry, this mic is really... I got it. We'll make it work. So this is the thought creation pattern. And initially, when I found this first one where thoughts create feelings, feelings then go to create behaviors, and then behaviors reinforce their thoughts, I actually kind of look at this a little bit differently, where it's our feelings that create thoughts. Thoughts create our behaviors, and then our behaviors reinforce our feelings. So you could kind of switch those around. And then the next one is really where it's the truth, where our thoughts are really connected to our physical reactions, but they're also connected to our behaviors and our feelings. And all of those play a role in the current environment and the situation that we're in at any given moment. So this is really what's generating a lot of our subconscious thinking and our subconscious reactions and processing and behaviors. So, subconscious programming during the first stage of our physiological development. I'm just going to hold it. Hey guys. So during the first stages of our physiological development, children develop a sense of trust with their caregivers when they provide reliability, care, and affection. A lack in this will lead to mistrust. And there's actually a psychologist that the psychologist Erickson he talks about the stages of development, which is really interesting. So it kind of shows us how our brain processes and develops from the moment we are born until our maturity and death. And it goes through all kinds of different things and how that leads to how we start to trust our autonomy, because the next step from 2 to 3 years old, we're developing a sense of personal control over our physical skills. So if we're not taught these things, then we're actually becoming very dependent. And success leads to feelings of autonomy where, hey, I can do all these things myself. And if you're not really taught these things, or if you're not gaining that control, the failure results in feeling of shame and doubt. So now you're being very reliant on your caregivers, and this is now being replicated throughout our lives. And I can pass this around just so you can kind of see it and see how each of our development stages really affects us within our life. So when we have caregivers who are inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, or rejecting, they contribute to feelings of mistrust. And then failure to develop that trust will result in fear and a belief that the world is inconsistent and unpredictable. So when we have this sense of not being able to trust anything in the world, can you see how this can really affect us as we develop later on in life and how we interact with the world itself? So we really develop our subconscious programming through modeled behaviors as we're growing up. So this comes from authority figures, teachers, basically our role models as we are developing and growing older. And we're learning all of these strategies through positive and negative reinforcement. So like what feels positive, and I'll go into that a little bit more here soon. But the base level of how we get our subconscious programming is in repetition plus our emotion. So when we have those two things coming at us over and over again, it is creating this conditioning and our subconscious programming. And that'll be carried from when we start to develop that, and we'll carry that all the way into adulthood. And it's really interesting. As we're doing these two things, our minds are really creative in how they create these mental shortcuts. They're called heuristics, and they allow us to problem solve and make quick judgments very quickly and efficiently. It becomes a rule of thumb strategies which shorten our decision-making time and allow people to function without constantly stopping and thinking about their next course of action. However, there are both benefits and drawbacks to that next course. The learned and adaptive strategies may be relevant or may not be relevant, using old, outdated information, and may not be the most efficient problem-solving method at that time. But these are all things that we learned in childhood that we're now bringing into our adulthood. So, and when we pair that with our reticular activating system, the neurons ultimately responsible for attention, arousal, modulation of muscle tone, and ability to focus, ensures the brain does not have to process more information than we can handle at any given moment through our sensory input. So I call those two things together our automated response system. So that's how we're basically making quick decisions without having to think about it. So this is where the positive and negative asymmetry comes into place, because from an evolutionary standpoint, our survival depends on this negativity bias. This was our way for our ancestors to be cautious of all environmental dangers around us. And this also is a learned response. We learn from it, we use this information to, like, this is our survival tactics. Like, oh, this is the negative, we're going to kind of steer away from that. And these are all our protectionary mechanisms that are in place to basically have brought us to this point of survival. So continuing focus on negative thought patterns reinforces and strengthens those neural pathways as well. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this chart, but I really love the Maslow's hierarchy of needs because it shows us like on how simple we can be. So our basic needs and our survival needs are really at the bottom. This is breathing, sleeping. This is where we need clothing, food, shelter, water, and then all of these base structures needs need to be met in order to create that strong foundation for the next tier. We're not going to be moving up to these next few tiers without those base level structures being strong. So you're not even thinking about your security if you're thinking about your shelter, food, and water. So basic physiological and survival needs being met allow the cognitive function to increase and expand. So if we're not meeting those needs, we're not able to cognitively think about the next things. We're not thinking about friendship. We're not thinking about relationships and family. We're thinking about our basic levels of need to survive. So when these lower threats, or when these threats to lower tiers occur, the ability to empathize with others decreases and triggers survival mode tactics. So kind of interesting how that all works. This is a really interesting concept about our emotional needs that we all have on a subconscious level. So we all basically have these needs in order to feel emotionally connected and within the world around us. And based on how you were raised as children, depends on which ones are really going to be needed more within your adulthood. So if you have a strong desire for social interaction and affection and appreciation, companionship, empathy, intimacy, acceptance, belonging, and closeness, these are all directly tied to your emotional need for love and connection. If you're feeling that you need to have self-recognition, self-development, self-realization, progress, and opportunity, these are all tied to your subconscious need for growth. And then if you need to be seen, understood, seen as being competent, admired, participating with life, feeling your purpose, empowerment, and to matter, this is really the subconscious need around significance. Contribution is really centered around self-fulfillment, to give, to create, to assist, to be present, to support, and to nurture. So we all have these embedded subconscious emotional needs that do need to be met. So when we have a subconscious need for certainty, we have this strong need for safety, security, structure, routine, support, stability, and trust. Those are actually directly related to our basic survival needs as well. And that's where also uncertainty comes in too, because we also need to feel like we have stimulation within our life, the ability to be spontaneous, have expression, also have that inspiration in there, discovery, playfulness, and humor, beauty, and joy. Those are all flowing within uncertainty of having that emotional need. So when I started really kind of digging into this, I really wasn't sure what emotions were. So emotions and feelings are not the same thing. And I was like, wow, how are they not the same thing? So emotions are basically real-time data that is sparked within our body and have sensations within our body. So when we're feeling something like fear or anxiety, that isn't an emotion. That isn't raw interpreted data that our body is receiving and we can feel it. It's basically making us more aware to the world around us. And it's based on our present reality. And so as we're developing emotional awareness, it can help prevent reactivity and false beliefs. So when we start to understand our emotions, it really helps us not build on those emotional beliefs. That's where feelings come in. These are all emotionally driven. These are based on reactions to stimulus. So this is the story behind the emotions that we're feeling. And this is where the thought process comes in. So this is where they can be really biased. They're all altered by our mental misconceptions. And basically this is our interpretation of what we're feeling. If we're not understanding what we're feeling, then we're making our own story of what we're feeling at that given time. So, and when we don't feel our emotions, which takes about 90 seconds per emotion, it starts to get repressed into the body and not processed. And that can be very negative because now our body is feeling something that we're not understanding, and we're also reacting and creating feelings and thoughts behind it and reacting from that, and that we have no idea why we're acting that way either. So emotional thoughts and feelings can create mental stories remaining long after the emotion is gone. And that's what really kind of, it can even re-trigger that emotion, but it also kind of reinforces those false beliefs that we've created within our subconscious brain about the given reality that we're in. So yeah, feelings are emotionally driven based on thoughts and to stimulus. So for feeling emotions, there's a difference between like feeling the emotion, paying attention to the emotion, understanding the emotions that are stimulated within the body, and that can create really a lot of confusion with our decision making, and it can turn it into poor behavior because now we're reacting and not responding to what's going on around us. So Paul Ekman has identified the 6 basic emotions, and he says that we're all experiencing them universally as humans within our culture. And those 6 basic emotions are happiness, sadness, disgust, fear, surprise, and anger. And I really like this chart because it kind of branches off and how each of those emotions can kind of have secondary and tertiary emotions that come with it. So, you know, we're here to basically feel emotions, and this is basically the full spectrum of emotions that we're feeling within us. So when we have emotions, there's first that sensory perceptual experience that was stimulated through our sensory. So, you know, seeing, touching, feeling, tasting, and then the smelling. So all of those are really important, especially from a survival aspect of our lives. If we can't smell a poison, or if we, you know, that's when something gets stimulated. It also stimulates our brain into, sorry, I forgot where I was going with that. I didn't write it down. But I had a good idea on that one. But secondly, the emotions, there are drives to things that we intuitively want to approach that are good, and then things that are bad that we intuitively want to avoid. So this is where emotions really come into our behaviors. Are we moving towards it? Are we moving away from it? And this is what drives kind of our behaviors in that aspect. There are emotions which are response sets that prepare to energize an action in response to the perceptions and drives. So emotions are a central part of our core consciousness. They provide information about one's goals and needs. There are 2 broad systems of emotions, the negative and the positive. Negative emotions signal threat to needs and goals and energize avoidance. The positive emotions signal opportunity to meet goals and needs and energize towards the approach. And then each emotion will prepare us for action. So each individual kind of has a different temperament when it comes to our emotions. Some individuals will have more of an emotional negative emotional system that are easily triggered. I believe this is coming from a lot of trauma, so it's like basically a trauma response. And that's what causes us to, or overstimulated. So this is when we get like too emotional because we have so much trauma and overstimulation, or basic needs were going unmet for an extended amount of time. And I believe that there's lots of different processes for feeling these. First, it's like experiencing the emotion, and then kind of defining the emotion, creating the feeling, which actually turns into creating the story that the emotion evokes, that is created through our brain. And then there's the experiential part of emotion, the private thoughts emotions create, the public behavior, and then the public behavior that is promoted from the emotion. This is one of the most interesting parts about our subconscious. When I was talking about we have positive and negative, these are the negative wounds that come from our subconscious that we don't actually think about too often. So within those emotions, it creates these thoughts that, I am not enough, I am bad, I am weak, I am unloved, I am unsafe, I do not belong, I am disconnected, I am rejected, I am disliked. All of these subconscious core wounds are very prevalent within the subconscious brain, and now we're acting and creating behaviors behind these emotions. With unconscious, like we're not aware that we're doing a lot of these things. So these are the stories that we're telling ourselves within our mind. And it can cause a lot of negative behaviors within society, within people. I mean, I know that I have experienced a lot of these myself, when I'm disrespected, I'm powerless, feeling like I'm abandoned, I'm helpless, I'm unworthy, I'm trapped, I'm stuck. So these are things that really kind of speak loudly when we start to see people's behaviors. But there is another side of this. There are core strengths, but I'm not here to talk about that because that actually helps mental health and not go the opposite direction where we're feeling all these things. So when we have the emotions and then the feelings that come from it, so the thoughts, so when we first initially feel an emotion, it could become a temporary state of being. So this is a condition, we're feeling it for a very short amount of time. After the state has passed, we return to normal, everything's good. Now, then there's a point when it becomes a trait. So this becomes a part of the individual's personality and long-term characteristics through their behaviors, actions, feelings, and response programming. These attributes are part of who they are, ingrained and defined in their personality. So when we start doing that thing with our subconscious where we have that repetition plus emotion, now it is ingrained into our personality and it becomes a trait. So after, so behaviors become traits when it develops as part of our response reaction based on programming to outside stimulus. Some of the emotions that I really wanted to talk about revolve around things that kind of trigger us. So when we experience stress, it is a response to the outside stimulus that we are feeling. It is a natural response. It prompts us to address the challenges and threats in our life. It can be cognitive, but it can also be emotional stress that manifests when we feel that our environmental demand is beyond the capability for us to function or cope successfully. So once we hit overwhelm, this is when we've overloaded on stress to the point where we cannot function at all. The body is overpowered by thought and feeling. Overwhelm can create an physical experience such as rapid heartbeat, difficulty breathing, kind of like what I'm experiencing. No, just kidding. Dizziness, fatigue, headaches, cramps, and an upset stomach, and other things. So I think we've all kind of experienced stress and overwhelm, and a lot of it really kind of develops from an emotional view. It's not what's actually happening to us, it's what we think is happening to us through our emotional response system that we're feeling. So a lot of us get stuck, or there's a healthy stress cycle because our bodies are really resilient and they're pretty amazing. They're actually ready for stress. So it goes through tension, stress, and then relief, relax. So on a physical level, like if we're trying to get across ice, we have that tension and then it stresses the body, but as soon as we're done, there's a moment of release and relax. So the body actually gets stronger when we do stuff like that. When on an emotional level, it also gets stronger when we go through that. But if we don't allow that relief, relax, and we go through stress, tension, overwhelm, tension, stress, overwhelm, it starts this very toxic cycle within our bodies. It actually starts to develop the oxidative stress, and that can just wreak havoc on the entire body. Okay, so I think we've all experienced anxiety, or is it just me right now in this moment? I'm kidding. Yeah, anxiety is one of the body's reaction to something stressful. So, or what we perceive as stressful. And that's a really interesting thing about the body is it doesn't matter if it's just perceived or it's actually happening. It's going to respond and react the same way. Or as it's just the same way. So anxiety is really meant for us to notice when we're in a dangerous situation or it's unfamiliar. So we're not used to the situation. It's the first time we've experienced this. We might be feeling anxiety. You know, first time public speaking. It's kind of freaking terrifying, even though y'all are my safe space here. So it's anxiety is also characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts. So this is our emotions are now stimulating this thought, and this is creating a physical change within our body, like increased blood pressure. I really kind of enjoyed this quote that I found. You are afraid of surrender because you don't want to lose control, but you really never had any control to begin with. All you had was anxiety. Wow. Okay. Whew. Well then. The other one that I really wanted to talk about that causes a lot of mental health anguish is worry. So worry is the thinking aspect of our anxiety. This is the chain of negative thoughts about bad things that may happen in the future. They're not actually freaking happening, and I'm freaking the hell out about it. Oh my gosh. How many people have experienced that before? Okay. Just me. Cool. No. So worry, we think we're using as a coping mechanism, believing it's helpful, but all it's doing is adding stress. It's not helpful at all. So it's really something that we condition ourselves and we think it's uncontrollable, but it's us causing it on ourselves. It's a hard thing to swallow right there. So, and it also creates an idea, how many of us have ever felt fear in our life? How about emotional fear? Okay. So this isn't a primal emotion. This is really hitting in our survival tactics and our survival brain. So it's actually releasing a biochemical response within the body, and it's going to be very different depending on the individual who's experiencing this. So initially it's meant to alert us of the presence of danger or threat of harm, whether there's danger or not, just like it's a perceived danger or an actual danger. We're still going to experience this fear the same. And the body doesn't know the difference. It's like, oh, we're experiencing fear right now. Freak the fuck out. So sometimes these fears do stem from real threats, but it also can originate from something that we imagined or perceived. While fear is a natural response to some situations, it can lead to distress and worry when extreme or out of control proportion to actual threat. Man, has anyone ever felt hopeless before? So hopelessness really kind of stems from feeling alienated or lack of inspiration. When we feel doomed, limited, and captivity is at limit. So when we don't feel like we have a choice, so we feel powerless, we feel oppressed, like we're stuck in captivity. The opposite of that is when we feel like we can achieve our goals, and we see the pathways through to achieving our goals. And we have our agency, and we feel like that is tested, and we can get to that change that we desire within our minds. So that is the opposite of feeling hopeless, is this idea that we can get through this and meet our goals. But sometimes hopelessness kind of overwhelms us and takes over. I was really intrigued by these ideas of shame and blame, because I know that there's a lot of times when we've put shame on ourselves, and put shame on others, and put blame on ourselves, and blame on others. So shame is a powerful emotion caused by the awareness of having done something wrong or foolish. How many of us have ever shamed ourselves? How many of us have shamed others? So when we have a negative emotional state, usually originating in childhood, this is where a lot of the shame really kind of comes up for us. Like we had a moment in our childhood that made us feel a certain way, and that's who we are, and it can start to trigger a lot of those core wounds that I had brought up earlier. So when we're not enough, when we're bad, that we'll be rejected because we did something wrong. And those really can kind of perpetuate within thought processes, and really turn into poor negative behavior that we're all projecting into the world. So when we feel shame, we're actually seeing ourselves through someone else's eyes. So we're seeing ourselves as their perception of who we think, or who they think we are. When we experience blame, it's really hard to separate the wrongdoing and action from the person. And this is where it gets really tricky, because when we want to blame someone, when is it their personality versus when is it just a state of being? Like, did they do it once because of, they felt their own emotion, or are they continuously choosing that action? So blaming really brings that negative focus to our own inadequacies and insecurities. The best way to get through both of these is to actually see the person for who they are and empathizing with what they're going through. So it's acceptance of them as a person and separating out their behavior to their identity. So, and it also takes being accountable to that action for it to fully heal. So that's how they start to change their behavior, and it starts to heal these emotional wounds and feelings. Has anyone ever felt unworthy? Feeling like you lack in value, insufficient in your worth? When we're challenged by these feelings, we feel like we don't deserve things. We don't feel like we deserve love. We don't feel like we deserve affection, that we can't achieve our dreams and goals, that we're just unworthy of even of doing that, so why even try? So a lot of these feelings of being unworthy do stem from our trauma and neglect from childhood. That is all within our subconscious brain. So this is one that I kind of brought in last minute, mainly because it's a hard one. It's a hard one to feel humiliation. So this is when we feel that we've received unjustified mistreatment that violates dignity and a sense of worth as a human being. So this is really what's bringing on that unworthiness. And when we feel humiliated, we have the tendency to feel not deserving of what happened to us. When we start to feel like that, we start to react like a wild animal and have poor behaviors. And we'll do things that we normally wouldn't do. So that means when we're being ridiculed, taunted, teased, harassed for perceived social inadequacies. They've actually shown that a lot of the school shooters and other people that have done things that are outside of normal behavior were doing so out of humiliation, because they didn't feel like what happened to them was okay. So this is their reactionary response. I'm not saying it's okay, but this is like me empathizing with, okay, we're feeling your core wounds, and this is how we're reacting to them. So when I start thinking about what causes mental illness, it's really from our long-term physical and emotional needs not being met. When we sit here and we're not meeting those, when we're not feeling love and connection, we're not feeling growth, we're not feeling significant, we're not feeling like we're contributing to the world. And then we're living in uncertainty and certain doom for the most part. A lot of this stems from that subconscious, unprocessed, and repressed emotions. So that trauma, that fear, all those things that we saw in Freud's iceberg. I love that iceberg. It's really taught me a lot. So I really didn't have a chance to talk about a lot of the traumas and abuses that really feed into what feeds into mental illness. I will kind of talk a little bit about psychological warfare, because this is really what's turning into the mental and emotional manipulation. And when our entire thought process and feelings are built on that, it's kind of crazy. And then on top of that, when they're attacking the identity. So I also feel like being disconnected from nature really causes a lot of mental illness for people, because we have no sense of who we are. We did come from nature, but here we are in this like concrete jungle, fighting to survive. We're literally fighting for our basic needs to be met. We can't even move up to the next tier of meeting our emotional needs and feeling that sense of love and connection. And we're social creatures. Like, we thrive within communities, and we thrive off culture, and we thrive off community. So a lot of our mental illnesses can also be created from social interactions in the negative sense, or if we're lacking social interaction because of our core wounds and we feel like we're not enough and that we can't connect, we're going to be rejected and we don't belong. And one that I would love for Stephanie to team up with me on is really talk about how diet causes a lot of mental illness and what's going on within our bodies with diet. So psychological warfare involves the planned use of propaganda and other psychological operations to influence opinions, emotions, attitudes, and behaviors of opposition groups. So can we see how psychological warfare, when it's continuously repetition programmed in with that emotion, how it's actually programming your subconscious brain? And if you're not aware of it, the effects that it can have on you and your behaviors and your choices and your perceptions and your values and your principles and what you're going to do next. So they're constantly telling you that something's going to kill you and you need to be afraid and this is going on and you need this pill and you need this vaccine and you need all these other things or you're going to die. And it's being fed to you through every screen that you see. Human beings did not evolve to get 80% of their reality from electric screens, whose contents are illusions crafted by an enemy tribe that specializes in brainwashing and deception. And I absolutely love, oh, you can't see the full meme. Oh my goodness. Okay. So it says me after 2 years of this bullshit psyops, watching 2 different realities play out, waiting for the rest of these motherfuckers to wake up and stop complying with tyranny. Just light it. Fucking light it. So then I start to think about what support can we offer people that are experiencing a mental breakdown. Well, first, I think you need to be in a good place to offer support. So this is really key, especially if you have any codependency issues and all these people-pleasing issues, that you want to make sure that you're in a state where you can offer help and support and not get dragged down with them. So this means being present. Are we offering them a safe space to express themselves and to be in that emotion and to be in that state of being? And with that, we need to be able to offer them love, empathy, acceptance, and belonging. Otherwise, we're going to severely trigger their core wounds. And you don't know what ones they have until they start experiencing them. This one is very interesting because I think we want to so much help people get through stuff that we start to guide them and try and fix them and show them like the way through. But if they're not experiencing that emotion for at least 90 seconds, they're not going to get through that, and then that emotions and whatever they're feeling and going through will get, repressed back into the body. So this is where we have to sit with them through their dark moments. I'm so grateful for Stephanie. She's sat through my dark moments several times, and I'd like to think I've sat through hers. So it's really important that we have that time where we're not trying to fix them, and we just allow them to be in that space. And it comes with an idea of non-judgment. So we're not talking down to them for feeling these things. We're actually just talking through them, or letting them talk through it. And then understanding that there's a difference between something that's very difficult and something bad. Because now all of a sudden our subconscious brain is really attached to those core wounds that we have. So if we start to think it's bad, then like, oh, I'm bad, that I'm experiencing this thing that's going on. And that's not what we want to do when they're experiencing something that's very difficult and hard. And so it's really important when you see someone who's experiencing like a mental health breakdown to identify when you are not capable of handling the situation on your own. This is when dangerous things come into play and we start to see people react very poorly. I've been in that position a few times, and I reacted poorly. It's really good to kind of be aware of the situation at hand. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to know when you need support in a situation that you're not capable of doing it all on your own. And then if they are open to it, see if they want to have, want to be open to resources, tools, and techniques. There's all kinds of different things that have helped me through my emotional breakdowns and watching other people have emotional breakdowns, and I kind of go into it right here. So when we have communal outreach, a lot of the times we do need that source of love and connection. And so this is where it becomes really important that we have a community of people that see us, that we feel appreciated, and that we're seen, heard, understood, loved, supported, and we have a sense of belonging. Because then that's actually going to start healing those core wounds that we have. Some people need therapy. I have a really hard time with therapy, so I found other ways, like learning every single thing I can about the brain and what's going on, and what emotions are, and how to start to feel them. But there's also other support networks, and that works almost just as well as therapy. But some of the things that we can really start to implement is like moving our body, because as we're repressing those emotions within our body, we can start to release them and have that energy flow and exercise. And there's other people that specialize in energy work, so I don't know if you're all hippie and want to get into that, but it's pretty cool. There's a lot of things about sensory stimulation. So as we're experiencing all of our different senses, like that's really what's causing a lot of emotions. So if we can stimulate those in positive ways instead of negative ways, we can start to really get through a lot of these mental health issues. I was really fortunate again, Stephanie. She was amazing. She did a breathwork ceremony with another good friend of ours. And it kind of really opened my eyes to how much breathing. Like, I used to get super upset when people were like, just breathe, just breathe. I'm like, dude, my brain tells me to breathe. I don't need to think about it. But it turns out that, there's a difference between being able to having a conscious breath and hyperventilating when we're freaking out, because all of a sudden our body like tenses up and then I can't breathe because it's literally too tense. So learning how to breathe appropriately has helped me get through some of the most emotional, crazy situations I've ever experienced in my life. I kind of did a breathing exercise before coming up. I haven't breathed since then, so. Thanks. And then diet and healthy lifestyle changes will make a difference within someone experiencing mental health issues. And music. So here we are, like stimulating all of our things. So whether it's sound, whether it's touch, breathing. I like to sniff essential oils, so if you see me in the corner, that's what I'm doing. I'm learning to breathe. No. But there's all kinds of different ways that we can approach these. There's no one size fits all. Everyone's going to be different. There's going to be something that works for them a little bit better than something else. And so I believe in learning all kinds of different ways to get through. So what is our community responsibility? Well, I'm super fortunate to have my first experience be here with Larkin Rose, and he taught me the idea that it is us and them versus the actual problem. So when we kind of look at this, like, we're all on the same side. We all want everyone to be healthy and happy. What's the problem? How do we get through it together? When we come at it with empathy and compassion, we can start to see the person behind the behavior. So they are not their behavior. They're experiencing this behavior for a number of reasons. Understanding what's causing that behavior will probably solve the problem a little bit better than focusing on the behavior itself. When we start to engage as a community and come together, it's amazing what happens. I've noticed that finding my community of people, that sense of belonging, that I'm here and not rejected and loved and cared about and seen, it really changes a lot of things for a lot of people. So this is where inclusion comes in. Am I included? Do I belong here? And even if we don't have the same principles, ideas, means of things, we can still connect on so many different other levels. And I believe that we'll see that we have more in common than we have not in common with each other. So how do we create these support networks? What does that mean? What does that look like? Well, this is a really amazing support network right here. We've come together to talk about all kinds of things that have to do with our freedom and what gets us to the next step in evolution. So this is one great thing of this community. How do we have emotional intelligence? well, when we start to see past ourselves and what the other person is experiencing and what they're feeling and what their needs are, we start to develop an emotional intelligence with them. And now we can start to relate on an authentic level where, we all experience these things. We all experience all these emotions. Every single one of them that I showed you, we've all felt at one point in time or another. And then we can start to clearly communicate what our needs are, where we're lacking, and what we're feeling. And then we can start to genuinely express. I do believe that this is a great source of being able to offer these resources and support so that we don't feel alone. These are a lot of ideas that I didn't get to, that I thought it would be just way too long if I was like, ooh, I'm going to just verbally vomit all these things at you. But I'd really like to expand on triggers and how that affects our mental health, our central nervous system, and how that has everything to do with how we feel, act, think, and behave. And then our body and brain chemistry and how that comes into play with our mental health. What is that heightened emotional response system? So this really has to do like when we're triggered and into survival mode and we're feeling that flight or fight response as well as that freeze or fawn. It goes so much deeper than that. And some people that have been traumatized and are in that state of being, it turns more than just from that state of being to their personality and it becomes their trait. So now they're constantly at that state of freeze and fawn. Well, yeah, like me right now, fawning. Freezing and the fight or flight. So, and then how many of us were taught emotional processing? Yeah, I wasn't taught that either. I had no idea what I'm doing up here. And just even like anything that I've experienced, it's like, wow, okay, so like first I have to understand the emotion, then I have to feel that emotion, and then I have to go from there. Like it's crazy. And then I'd love to talk about different ways to reprogram the subconscious brain, because if we're sitting here and everything that we're doing and acting and feeling and that comes out of us is coming from my childhood, holy crap. Wow. Yeah, so on a conscious level, I'd love to learn how to share with you all the different ways to reprogram that subconscious brain. So there's a lot of cognitive reframing that we can do. So, those feelings come into play and they create all these like crazy thoughts and all these false belief systems. How do we reframe those to be something that's like factually based in reality? So that's crazy. I don't know if all of you guys saw that Erikson stage of development, but that is, I would love to kind of discuss that more with people. I really love the idea of attachment theory and how our childhood really has created a base structure for how we have every relationship in our life, not just with our partners, but with our friends, family, and even strangers that we interact with on a daily basis. And then I'd love to talk about how diet and food come into play with mental health, where herbs and natural remedies will always be much better than taking a bunch of drugs. I have a big issue with taking SSRIs or anything else under that for depression. It's kind of scary because we need serotonin for every single function that our body does, pretty much, almost everything. And so when we're not allowing the blood to take it out of our brain to do other functions, like, yeah, we might feel better, but what other systems are it affecting? So I don't feel like SSRIs are the answer to anything. There's so many healing modalities that help people get through a lot of different things that I don't feel like there's ever one modality that will just fix your life and this is it. There's so many out there that are great, that do so much for the human body. And then how many people have done their shadow work? I've done a little. Cool. And then I'd love to kind of talk about how community support networks work within mental health. I did kind of want to end it with this quote. Let's change the way we eat. Let's change the way we live. Let's change the way we treat each other. The old way wasn't working for us, so it's up to us. Hold on, I forgot that. Hold on. You see, the old way wasn't working, so it's up to us and to do what we got to do to survive. I'm a 90s baby. That's Tupac. It's super relevant to right now. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys being here. And yeah, thank you.
Any questions? I'll start. All right, Lindsay420@gmail.com. Can you say a word about drugs?
What drugs are we testing? No. So I mean, weed can be very helpful. I personally had smoked weed for over 20 years, and I felt it very helpful for when it came to stress and anxiety and all these other things. It helped bring me down a bit. Actually, I have been quit smoking weed for a year, and I did this for a couple different reasons. I noticed that I actually was not coping with what was going on around me, that I used it as kind of like a depressant, so I didn't have to deal. And what ended up happening was that I was actually like tolerating things that I would not tolerate when I was sober from people, and it was creating brain chemicals in my brain, and it made me lazy. Like, not in the sense that I was lazy, like it made my brain lazy. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not stressed, so there's good things with weed. I'm not trying to diss on weed. I smoked it for 20 years. It helped me get through it. I broke my back. I cracked my head open. I've had a lot of physical traumas, emotional traumas, and mental traumas that have happened to me. So it helped me get through these periods of time. And so if you need it for those reasons, it's going to do those things. But at a certain point, we have to find better ways to kind of get through those things and address what's really going on underlying. So if, I literally was using it as my coping mechanism for everything. I couldn't get up without smoking weed. I couldn't do anything. I would hold on, let me smoke a bowl first. On lunch, smoking weed. Now, anything in excess can be a bad thing. But if we're using it responsibly and we're using it, I'm totally fine with that. Use it as your leisure. It can be really amazing and healing in a lot of different ways, especially when you can't get out of that stress state or any of that. Amazing. Mushrooms, definitely use on a recreational level. Or medicinal, however you choose. There's amazing. The great thing about mushrooms is that it allows us to experience our emotions without necessarily being in too much pain. So when we experience pain, just like anything else, whether it's emotional or physical or anything, the body can't tell the difference. Now, mushrooms are allowing us to feel the pain without it being too painful for us, so we can actually sense through what that emotion is, what are the origins of it, and then kind of come up with a new way of thinking about it. That's creating these new neural pathways within the brain. So, and our brain is amazing. So just like how we have all those same thoughts that come up over and over again, it's strengthening that neural pathway. Mushrooms allow us to create new neural pathways within the brain. But if we're not continuously focusing on them, they're weak and they're not strong. So, and then sometimes that's why we end up coming back to old feelings, old thoughts, old all that stuff is because those neural pathways that we've created are much stronger than the new ones that we have. So that's where the integration comes in of how do we make those thoughts strong and have those be the focus of our subconscious brain on a conscious level. Acid, I have a lot of mixed feelings about. I think it can be great. On a personal level, when I was 14 years old, my brother's friend was on acid, and basically when he was on acid, he was told that he was not allowed to stay where he was staying, and he was jumping around from community homes and his adopted home and other places, and he ended up staying with my friend's friend. While he was on acid, he was told that he couldn't stay there anymore and he needed to leave, and he had a very bad reaction to that and ended up murdering my friend, stabbing her 37 times in the chest. So there can be a bad side to these things, that if you're not with someone a trip sitter and you're experiencing and then you start to see your core wounds and you start to see your shadow, these are the negative effects of those things. I'm not saying don't do acid. There's some weird drugs out there that might stimulate your brain in weird ways, so maybe don't do that kind of stuff. But on the natural side of things, I really think that there's a lot of good things that we can do, especially through mushrooms. If you use weed responsibly, not me smoking it every 5 minutes for 20 years. Now that I smoke weed, I have a really hard time. It gives me anxiety. It also makes me think of all my inadequacies and insecurities. And so I think now it's a choice. I think it's run its course with me. I'm not saying that it's not amazing and did wonders, though. So. I'm okay with that. if you want to, I've done DMT before, and it has taught me some amazing things. It taught me that a heavy soul can't fly. That means that everything that I've been holding on to in my life, I kind of needed to experience it fully and let it go. That was a beautiful thing and realization to come to while I was on that experience. The second time I experienced DMT, it taught me how to be an energy conduit. So I was not taking on other people's energies and problems and identifying it with myself, that I was allowing that healing to kind of go through me and not become a part of me and let it go. So there's a lot of beautiful things that we can do with these medicines if we do them correctly.
I got a question to kind of follow up on this first one here was, you mentioned SSRIs and other pharmaceutical things like that, and that you don't think that they're that great, or that's, I'm paraphrasing what you said, but
Right.
But
there's definitely better ways. But go on.
But yeah, so I guess what I was curious about, like, what are some alternatives? I saw that you had, like, diet can be effective and physical exercise, but are there other natural remedies for those sort of things?
There's tons of natural herbs that help stimulate things, like St. John's wort is really good for depression. Valerian root helps calm the body, so now you're experiencing some of that. There's like kava that reduces stress. So there's all kinds of different herbs that I would love to expand on more in the future, to talk about how we can utilize these things and what things to stay away from that really kind of bring us back into the negative things. So like when we don't have enough serotonin that's running through our body, like there's so many different systems that are not working. So tryptophan is one of the amino acids, the main amino acids to create serotonin. And we can get that naturally through all kinds of different food sources. So like there's no, like not necessarily no reason. There's some people who do see improvement with these things, but what ends up happening with a lot of these antidepressant drugs is it changes the receptors in our brain to receive things. Also, the brain is kind of lazy in the sense that it's just like, oh, look, there's all the serotonin, I don't have to produce it anymore. And the second these people stop taking these drugs, now their body is like, oh my God. And so everything that they were experiencing before, all the pain in their body comes back, all the bad feelings, everything like kind of surges. So when I broke my back and they told me I was depressed, like it made sense. Like I broke my back, I couldn't move. I was like, they were like, you're in back pain because you're depressed. And I was like, but I'm in back pain. I'm like, I'm depressed because I'm in back pain. And trying to fight with doctors is ridiculous. So they put me on some really bad drugs. I was on Effexor, which actually affects like everything. It affects your norepinephrine, and it affects your serotonin, and it affects your dopamine. And they didn't tell me as they ramped me up to these crazy high levels that I couldn't just stop taking it. I was out of town. Went to my best friend's funeral that I couldn't cry at, and I ran out of medicine, and I wasn't going to be home for a week. Well, I experienced what I call like the worst hangover that wasn't a hangover at all. I had like the spins. Even when I closed my eyes, I was spinning. I was in so much pain. I couldn't cognitively think. I was in this brain fog. It was the worst experience I've ever had in my life. And they don't tell you this stuff when they put you on these drugs. I literally spent longer weaning myself off this drug than I was ever on it. It took me months. Like the second I took one, all the symptoms that I was experiencing were gone. And so when you see people that are on these drugs for years and years and years, getting off of these drugs is probably worse than getting off heroin for a lot of people.
You talked a lot about trauma. It seems like most trauma happens when we're children.
Absolutely.
So what things do you think parents should and should not be doing to help avoid giving their children trauma?
Whew, man. Well, I'm a traumatized child. No. I mean, that's really tough. So, like, looking at those core wounds. How many people have experienced any of those core wounds at all? How many people think that they got those core wounds from when they were children? So what is the best way to emotionally connect with your child? Like for me, when I was a child, I was basically told that my feelings didn't matter, so my feelings were invalidated, and that I wasn't allowed to have feelings. Now that I am a 37-year-old adult, and I'm learning to feel my feelings for the first time, and that it's accepted and allowed, I'm not reacting from my feelings, because now I can feel through them completely and respond accordingly. after I felt them all the way through. And so I think talking to your children about feelings and their traumas, and I mean, it just, I might have to get back to you on that to have a really good answer, but you know, there's a lot of different things that we can do to heal traumas, because we're not alone in these. So a lot of the times to heal trauma, it's like, hey, I'm not alone in this feeling, and a lot of other people have had this feeling. Like, when I did this one study, it was amazing to find out how many people had received sexual trauma in their life. And I mean, I would say 4 out of 5 on average is what we're looking at, if not more than that. And so when I realized that I'm not alone and feeling like I've been sexually traumatized for a majority of my life by people that were close and intimate and that I thought cared about me and loved me, and how much that affected my core wounds, and being able to connect with others and trust others and share my love with others and all that, like that was huge. And learning how to basically tap into, you know, like I'm not alone. And being recognized that we're not alone in this is very healing. So,
Quick follow-up. What do you think about spanking?
Whew. Well, that is, again, doing that negative reinforcement. And it's going to have a long effect on a person. Instead of teaching them what is actually right and wrong, you're using a punishment system. So I really like that example. Has anyone heard that example of the monkeys who are in the cage, who are like climbing up the ladder to get the bananas? So it's kind of like that trauma can be passed down, and you don't even know that you were traumatized because you're a new monkey. You're like, why can't I get those bananas up there? I guess I should explain that one better. I feel like everyone's heard that example. But basically what that means is like there's 4 monkeys in a cage. They're trying to get up on go up the ladder to get the bananas, and they're sprayed with water. And so systematically they start replacing all the monkeys. And even though they're not spraying them with water anymore every time they climb up to get the bananas, other monkeys will literally beat the crap out of them to stop them from getting the bananas. And so this is like an indoctrination of, no, we just don't do this, and there's no reason why. When we have the understanding and connection of why we do things, it makes more sense than like, no, you just don't do that. So I think having like actual talks to your children about the consequences of their behaviors instead of physically assaulting your child will go way farther than physically assaulting your child.
So the monkey story sort of reminded me of the pandemic, where we were all locked down and we had to, you know, collectively behave. Anyway, my question is, well, because we just came out of the pandemic, looking at your chart of all the needs and the trauma, are there certain trauma that rise up to your mind in terms of like the consequences of what we're going to see of what children have experienced from the pandemic, adults even, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen it of how people are having a hard time connecting. We really respond to facial features and having that emotional intelligence. So having our face kind of blocked off from each other and separation from each other is directly related to like, we don't know how to emotionally connect. We don't know what love and connection means. And so here, let me go back to the love and connection. If we're not, and we're told to do these things, so like, I can start to empathize with people that have been so conditioned to do certain things a certain way. And I don't hate them anymore. I actually have a lot of empathy. And now that I have that understanding and acceptance, we can talk about why they're feeling that way. So we are going to start seeing a lot of these issues come up throughout their lives. And, you know, they're trained to follow. And this community, we've woken up to our indoctrination. We don't believe a lot of the things that our parents believed. But for a lot of people, that's really hard because they don't feel like they'll be accepted by their family, or that they'll be rejected, and that they'll be alone, and that they're unlovable. So this is where it's really important that we have this understanding that these people will have these core wounds, and we have to empower them through their core strengths, which I should have probably talked about now that I'm talking about this, to have that. But yes, there's absolutely long-term effects from all of this conditioning that we've received. And that will absolutely influence their behaviors and their motives and feelings in the future.
My question was also connected to the shutdown. I teach fourth graders, which are 10 and 11. I was looking at the stages of development. Some of my students were coming back to school for the first time this year since kindergarten. So they missed that whole stage of social interaction. And I'm looking at that list of the things that they're dealing with, and that's the stuff we were dealing with all year. Like, they completely put their self-worth into success and failure based on their grades. And they can't wrap their brain around it. They also don't have any sense of work ethic or social interaction. So if the whole generation is lacking these skills at all these different levels of childhood development, how do we deal with a systemic lack of that? How do we fix it, basically? We were joking as teachers that it's going to take us 5 years to catch them up academically, but socially and emotionally, this is much, much bigger. And I don't know that they're ever going to recover.
And they may not. They might not. I mean, we've seen as a generation coming from boomers, like, I mean, as we see the next generation, how their work ethic sucks, how, and so how do we, I mean, that's a great question. So, do you mind if I do some research on that? Can I get back to you on that? Sweet. Yeah, and I'd love to catch a game. And this was really meant to be more of a discussion. And to really just kind of open our eyes to these ideas of the psychology of how the brain works and what we can do to kind of fix this, because the pandemic shutdown really did open up a whole bunch of problems that we haven't even started to see the consequences of. And so how do we as a community, what is our responsibility to help these people? I mean, they feel completely inefficient. Like, I almost have to look at that list again. But when I saw that list, I was like, holy crap, like, I don't feel like I am developmentally strong. Like, I don't feel like I had that autonomy when I was a kid. I don't feel like I mistrusted everything based on how I grew up. So, and it took a lot of work for me to get to the point that I am right now. And it took a lot of community and learning from others and teaching skills. And it really took a lot of patience with a lot of people and love. And having that separation of, you know, what is causing their bad behavior and how to start reprogramming it. So through positive reinforcement, through repetition, and positive emotions is probably my best suggestion for changing behavior, especially on a subconscious level.
Hi. First off, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing so much about your past and setting the example of like being vulnerable to create a sense of belonging in this space. So thank you for having the courage and bravery. And I'll be vulnerable too, and I'm probably not the only one in this room, but when I think of government, I am automatically triggered. Like, I have a trauma response to government, and I don't have like a root memory, and I think it's like rooted in my family history. My mother lived in Poland during communism, that kind of thing, so like, it's even in my body, you know, to be like libertarian. I just feel it. And so the pandemic, we've been talking about the pandemic, that has created more of a trauma response in me, to the point where I had to delete or deactivate my Facebook. I had to stop watching the news. Like, all these things were like spiraling me down in a bad mental state. And I've finally done a lot of like healing work and all of that, but even like in our Telegram group, I'll see memes or things that just like trigger me, or like somebody will say something that they saw in the news, and here I am triggered. And it might take like, you know, I have practices in place. But the problem I have with my emotional reaction is it has led me to a place where I don't want to be an activist anymore. Like, being an activist was almost like mentally hard, is mentally challenging. And I know you mentioned like the difference between bad and difficult too. So I'm wondering, like, do you have any advice for me or anyone else who's triggered by government here on how to like have a healthy mindset, but also be activists for liberty at the same time.
Well, I think that's what we're all going for here. So I think having this sense of autonomy that no matter what we do, we're going to be okay. So I think our self is like, when someone told me that it's okay to be selfish, I was like, holy crap, okay, because taking care of myself means I'm not being a burden to anybody else. And so once we fill those bottom Maslow's hierarchy of needs and build those base structures up, now once we've hit like the top, upper levels, we can start to connect with our community. And this is where we start to make change within them. But we have to have our base levels like basically covered. So how do we feel safe within our home? How do we grow our own food? How do we become self-sustainable on those levels? And once we have ourselves taken care of, we can start taking care of everybody else. Everything else becomes like a codependent trait. Like, oh, I can't fix myself, so I'm going to fix everybody else, because we can see other people's shit way better than we can see our own. So I think, sorry, I'm turning stuff back on. I think dealing with basically ourself and understanding our emotions behind it. So what is triggering us about that? Like, yeah, we hate government. We don't like to be controlled. But if other people want to be controlled, why are we going to stop them? So my wonderful boyfriend has told me a lot that, like, he's like, this is why we need government sometimes. We have this kind of debate back and forth. And you know what? Some people love their government. They need to be told what to do. They don't know what to do without it. So let them be controlled. But know in yourself that you don't need to be controlled, and you have your power behind it to choose otherwise and choose better for yourself and your family and the people that you care about. So once you have your circle and then you can start to expand out from there. You're welcome.
Last question. What do you think about trigger warnings and the whole culture around it?
Being triggered is a choice at a certain point. We are responsible for our own triggers. Okay, I'm triggered all the time. Now, when I have my safe space to talk about the emotions that I'm feeling and why I'm feeling that way, and I feel it all the way through, it doesn't become a trigger anymore, because I've experienced it, and now I understand it, and now I know how to respond instead of react. And that's where our power is, when we can step back, not be controlled through our emotions, and respond as who we are and who we know ourselves to be and who we want to be, instead of who they want us to be and how they want us to respond and how they want us to behave.
That's our talk. Give it up for Lindsay. Thanks everybody for coming out. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We will be debating crypto versus Bitcoin maximalism. So drive safe, have a good night, and keep fighting the state.